here, and I'm here with a video that I had promised would be my very next video, and it wasn't. We had a lot of things happen over the holidays that prevented us from getting videos done. I came back with a few videos instead of this mail repair video that some of you were looking forward to. I've seen some different posts and texts to me about it. But we're going to be repairing period mail. This is going to be riveted mail, riveted and solid rings every other row. So that means you got a row of riveted, and you got a row of solid stamped rings, which are probably the sturdiest and best you're going to get, even better than welded or soldered shut. But first, I'd like to say I'm sorry that I haven't had more videos out this month, but I've had a really bad toothache and a cold, not that big a deal, toothache worse. But I've had a toothache, and it's kept me from getting things done with my mundane life, trying to work and do other things other than just a channel, because I have to do other things as well. It just was really hard to work out with the pain, but it's getting much better now. I'm here today to do this video, but I also want to say, with all that going on, I was still able to make a collaboration with ThegnThrand. Some of you who are fans of his and probably go by Facebook and the YouTube boat crew private group in Facebook have probably seen my post there of his videos where he's doing Kingdom Come Deliverance, his reviews on how realistic it is and the combat system. He's done 2 videos so far, and he's announced that we're going to have a Japanese armor collaboration video, which basically what's done is it's a mobility test. He's done some stuff out in the cold. You might want to go check that out. He did some stuff in the snow up in the mountains, which is really rare for him to be able to capture that and do that, just like it was for us for having snow day here. It's very rare here, but there he can kind of go up to the mountains. But he's done that, and he's going to actually have the full mobility testing and cannabo test, weapon test, what have you, mixed in with our test. And we're using our tatami armor from Japanese-armor.com, which is the U.S. version, Michael Astorita's. You can look him up online if you want to deal in the U.S. with Iron Mountain Armory. I know that ThegnThrand, or Raffaello, he deals with the European company, and the guy's name is Mike too, by the way, that runs that company as well. But in the UK, you might want to deal with their company for speed of service. Other than that, I don't think it really matters who you deal with if you're interested in the armors. But we have everything from the Oyanari, which is Raffaello's, in his version of a 16th century armor, and I have the Miyamoto 16th century armor, 2 different designs of it. I do have another design of a 16th century Japanese armor, plus the tatami armor, like an Ashigaru wear. And with that comparison, I think it's going to be the definitive must-see video on Japanese armor and Iron Mountain armor if you're curious about mobility and how it compares to European armor and to itself, even within different time periods and centuries in Japan. But anyway, to get going, also, I have another video we are working on that should be out. Just to let you know this. For Adam Seladin. He is a thrower. He does a lot of throwing videos on YouTube, a lot of quarter spin videos, and shuriken jitsu style stuff, like both shuriken jitsu, like I'm into. I'm going to try doing a video to put out as well, like Jorg Sprave had suggested, because he took over his channel while he's fighting cancer. So if you want to go by there and give him some support and watch his videos, check out the video that Jorg Sprave has done there. Be sure to go by and check that out. Hopefully mine will be out on there soon, providing he still needs the help, because I hear he's doing really good with the cancer he's fighting, and he may be totally back up on his channel, so I don't know, but I'll still release a video in any of that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get going with our repairs here. I have a Aventail, and this is all flat 10mm rings, 17 gauge. It is solid stamped rings, flat, and flat riveted rings, which are a little bit different. What we've done here is we've got a hole in it. And first of all, let's start talking about the mail and what doesn't damage the mail. This was damaged by a thrown weapon. And speaking of Adam's channel, throwing weapons do a tremendous amount of damage. They get the most acceleration and energy and speed you can have behind a weapon. Sometimes if it's got enough mass behind that weapon and not some really lightweight throwing implement you might get from a flea market or something, you're going to cause some serious damage. In this case, I threw a sword. That was a 10th century style sword, Viking style type 10 blade, just like Jorg Sprave did with his thrower. He shot them on his channel, and I was able to pierce the mail over several layers of cloth like Gambison and into ballistic shell over a scaled or shield. Yeah, I know the shield probably wouldn't normally be there behind a couple inches of gel, but that's because we were trying to have a test where we'd have something more realistic than he originally had attempted to a person and also have something we could both do easily in the video and set up. But believe it or not, I came out as a draw, as Yard will tell you that he thought it was a draw, but I'm not so sure about that. Because I mean, I'm sure.
That was because he couldn't move his machine around as easily as you could.
Very true, very true. He was saying since I could just pop it out anytime and just switch the sword around and throw it, and very accurately, it did almost the same amount of damage. He saw it as a draw. I kind of see that's possible, but I mean, I saw some of the ranges he's got with that thing, and I don't know how accurate it was, but that was really powerful. But anyway, if I want to check that, check that video out. Then we'll start off. I'm going to show you what I've got here. To repair the Maille, I'm not using a very expensive tool. I'm using a pair of long-handled regular pliers like everybody's used to seeing. They're even adjustable. They don't have to be adjustable. A lot of times these will be shaped like the little indentation in your rings, and I've got the rings right here that they sent us. Caddy ordered these from me. This company, I am not going to say the name of the company because they made me wait several months. So this video.
And I can't remember it.
And they couldn't remember the order.
No, I can't remember the
name.
Oh,
you can't remember it, but they made us wait several months. This wasn't a company from India, I believe. But anyway, they were supposed to be 6mm rings and 17 gauge to match this shirt here. Just a little bit smaller than this one here that's 10mm rings flat. I hadn't originally damaged this Aventail yet. I want to thank Medieval Shop though while we're going here. Medieval Shop makes excellent products, and this is one of the products here is the Aventail was sent to me as a gift that I used for Yark's Brave's video. He didn't expect me to actually test it or anything. It was just like a gift to the channel, you know, to go, hey, here's the Aventail, you might like this thread. The Viking Age, they're not as common, the Aventail, but later century they are, and believe it or not, earlier century during the migrational period and the Vendel period. I mean, it's not impossible for a Viking warrior during the Middle Ages to have hung mail from his helmet, even though we don't find a lot of coifs, and there's no great evidence of it. Huh?
For all we know, someone may have turned it into armor later.
Oh yeah, well, most certainly. We don't know armor can. I mean, we just haven't found a lot of helms actually at that time period.
Yeah, but mail can always be manipulated.
Very true, and we found more helms during the migrational or Vendel period than we have during the Viking Age or even later centuries. So, but this did become very popular later century to lighten up the heavier helmets and armor they were wearing and protect the neck. This could also be worn as a mantle, by the way. But what we've got here is we've got the round stock rings that happen to be 10mm, the same size as this. They were supposed to be 6mm in diameter, and they are about 17 gauge, maybe a hair thicker. I'm not going to complain about that because we've got them for repairs. We also have our rivets here, which are round rivets, not wedge rivets. And it's kind of hard to see this stuff. I might set it out here where you can kind of see.
I'll take some photos after.
Right, but they're very, very small. So I am farsighted. Meaning I can't see things very close to me like I used to, and I'm a locksmith by trade, so that's not real good, but I have some glasses here so I can inspect it up close and see if I've done a good job riveting it or not. Other than that, they make me dizzy and I don't like wearing them. Pretty good with a spear long range now. I feel more like the Allfather. You're not going to really crack shot at distance because I can see everything better than before, but up close, not so good. Yeah, but
because you're old.
Yeah, and most people don't realize how old I am, and they assume they literally outright assume that I'm much younger, I guess, because people call me a boy and all kinds of things in my videos. They have for years now. But anyway, let's get going here.
They call you a boy and they're 10 years younger than you.
The rivets you get are going to be bent together flat because they probably punched them. What they did is they rolled these round ones out on a spring or a coil shape, like on a mandrel. And when they roll it out, then they cut them or snip them where they're overlapping. Then they normally, if they're steel, modern steel, a lot of times they'll anneal them, heat them up and let them cool. So they're much more like iron, like during the actual raw iron period where they'd be using iron. So they can stamp a hole in it. So they put the hole in there. They use an anvil type thing with a hole and then a little very sharp punch and punch these little holes in it so the rivet fits. And the rivets, of course, are made. And round rivets are a lot harder to make, so that's why early period you see wedge rivets more commonly. And you see flat rings because they're easier to punch out too. That's why this shirt here, I was very happy with the one that your old Tim helped me get from Medieval Shop, Australia. Even though he didn't have this one for sale, the one that Roland Vorzeka and I tested in Egan, Minnesota, very much was like a copy of 14th century Maille that is a piece to show how it was created, and it's on a historical display. It looks very much the same. You have flat-like rings that are stamped out, and then you have round rings to hold it together. So this wasn't uncommon to have flat mixed with round stock rings that were done in this manner that we've got here. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the rings real quick and how you're going to use them. If it's already bent together, which it probably will be because they're not going to take the time to unbend these for you, you will have to unbend them, and I'll just pick one up to show you so you can slip them inside each other. And if you look at that, you can see that it is bent open, so you can just literally sit there and slide it into rings. I'll show a demonstration how easy it is to slip in that way. Then you'll have to bend them back together to slip your rivet inside the actual hull. And if you look at it close enough, which even with bad eyesight I can see, that it's punched through a certain way where it has a little rim around it where it punched through, so you want to push it from the opposite way so it slips in easily and doesn't hang up. And that's how your rivet's going to go in. And I have some that I riveted right here so you can see what they look like. And you might want to rivet some rings like this if you're not going to be using solid rings to fill in the solid areas and you have some of those cut missing, which can happen if you do enough damage to be able to actually damage it. Even though they're the more unlikely ones to be damaged, you can replace it with riveted rings that are riveted and then just insert them in as you go. You don't have to actually rivet these while they're in the mail, which is much more difficult. So let's get started on this hole here. I had stated how this will happen from throwing a sword through it. And I've got, I want to show this here. I've got 3 rings missing. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I'm over here.
Okay, and Caddy's recording me do this so we can see how it is to do.
As best as I can.
If you're not familiar with 4-in-1 rings, be sure and look up the pattern online. It is the most common pattern for historical European mail, although they do have other weaves. But since it's the most common, and see these rings, I bent them back together with my fingers. And another thing to talk about, if this was not riveted together, being this light of gauge wire, being a 17 gauge round stock, you could just literally grab the shirt. Like I just grab the end and start pulling and tear this apart. Matter of fact, Christopher Poor, which you might want to go by and check out one of my videos where I actually get a tour. I was gifted with that. I was up there. It was unexpected. He's the owner of Arms and Armor, and he's also the president of the Ewart Oakeshott Institute of all the real arms and armor museum pieces that are on display. He actually gave me a tour of the place, and there's a video a while back that a lot of people may have seen where he does that. He takes budded mail and he just literally tears it apart with his hands, but then he shows lighter weight mail like this that's riveted, and you just can't do that. You just have to pull and pull and pull, and it's got so much more strength to it because you have to break that rivet. It's not just the heavy gauge bent wire, which usually has to be much heavier, the budded stuff to hold itself together. Even that stuff will stop a cut. I've had some people say some bad stuff to me about that. I've tested heavy gauge budded wire, but against cuts it performs basically the same
Nails
way.
seem to be holding up
the
well and
gambeson
stopping the
as
edge. We're getting a lot
unless it
of fluff
unbends
from
as the riveted stuff. The thing where it doesn't perform the same is when it comes to thrusting, with spears, arrows, and so on, because it can unbend so easily. But even then, I've seen heavy enough gauge survive, believe it or not, arrows with proper gambeson behind it. You want to make sure your holes lined up. That's another thing. I have my holes separated here. You want the holes lined up, and I can see that, so I can slip it through. Just as I said, the thing's punched through in such a way that we want to make sure the hole's lined up, but we want to go from the opposite direction. Since they made the rings for you, and they're the ones who cut them and overlap them in this situation, you have very little control of which way they spread open, but you can kind of look at it and try to guess the best way to do it. Now what I've got to do right now is get this going through the actual hole.
This is where you can use your glasses, old man.
Most likely. It'd make it a little easier maybe. I hate them because if you only need them for close-up, then it actually is really terrible on your vision.
Gives you a headache from hell.
Yes.
At least they're not Coke bottle lenses.
Very true. Okay. Now I've got this one through. Now if anybody can see this here, I've actually got this through. Caddy, can you see that I got it through?
Yes.
Okay, now what I want to do is, we want to focus on this rivet. We don't want to focus on the actual rings trying to hold those together. We want to catch that rivet, and I'm not using specific pliers. I'm using regular long-handed pliers, and they have like a serration or a grip to them. Normally these pliers would be, like I said, slightly rounded to this piece here, which with these size rings, this is fine. but you might want to, if you want to make your own pair like this, you could take a pair of pliers and grind them flat. You take them apart, grind them flat, they're not got the grip on them, and drill little holes that fit your rivet properly, and make sure that they are perfectly lined up so when you get it in that niche that you can mash it. But in this case, I'm going to have to just guess it, get a hold of it, get it in the center, and I'm going to just mash the heck out of this once I know it's right and it's not folding. And what this is going to do is start the crimping process. And yes, it hurts the hand to do. Because I mean, you got to have some strong hands to be a mail monger or work with mail armor. And I'm sure these guys have the strongest grip in the world.
They probably have the handles covering over their tools.
Right. Now, if I'm in a hurry, I can leave it at that. If you have a special mail tool, that is in there. I don't know if you can see that, but I have just smushed that enough that it is there. The only problem is, since I use the little serrated ones, and we're trying to do this with, there's another thing I didn't mention about this, we're not using the specific historical tools or proper tools, which is probably as historical as you get as a pair of pliers.
You're using my household repair tools.
Using what I can get a hold of easily to do this with without spending extra money buying a special tool, excuse me, to do it with. So what we're going to do here is we want to show you, in case you want to get it just right, we're going to set this on this little anvil. This is one like you get from Tandy's leather. Matter of fact, it's Caddy's. I could have drilled a little hole in it to line it up better where it stays on here easier for that side of the rivet, but she would have gotten upset with me, most likely. But we're not going to really need to do that. We're going to set this on here, make sure that's on our rivet. What this is going to do is finish peening that out, you know, making a dome shape on it, the head of the rivet, and make it less likely to snag on things, and ensure that it is totally, completely riveted shut and good. And that's what I've accomplished right here. So all I used was a regular rivet setter, a small one from Tandy's, and a
my tiny little anvil.
tiny little mini anvil, and we have now put a ring in here. Now let's see how that looks compared to the other ones. Shouldn't cause very much difference compared to what we had, but can you see the results?
Mm-hmm.
And that's in there as good as what we got. It's not going to snag on anything, and the ring is together. Now, for this one, like I said, to repair it, we're going to need a couple more rings, because like I said in the video, I cut out 3 rings. I could tell 3 actually got cut. The rivets didn't break. Our rings were actually cut by the sword when it went through. That's how much force it had.
Remind me later, I've got to fix up whatever working on the top.
Oh, certainly. Yes, on the top it's starting to come unstitched a little bit. Well, I had trouble hanging it up properly because mail is heavy and you're trying to get it set up the way you want it and the way you need it.
And the kids like to try wear it as a skirt.
Correct.
Especially the youngest. He thinks it's great armor.
You know, the way they link this, I may be incorrect. I may be able to put 1 ring here because this actually gets bigger. When you do mail, there's 2 things. You either do it just square, like a big square, the 4-in-1 pattern, which 1 row is solid and 1 row is riveted and so on, so you don't have to rivet every ring unless you want to do full riveted mail, which is perfectly alright. It just takes a little more work. But what they do is they add extra rings to it. So when they did that, they have to add 2 rings and 1 ring. So I think honestly maybe I only cut 2 rings, but it made that big a hole because of the way it's set up. I'm looking at that right now. I think it's only going to take 1 more ring and we'll have this hole repaired. And as we go through here, which I'm going to do the shirt too, I'm going to explain what caused damage to it and what didn't cause damage to the mail. I suppose I should say that right now while I'm setting this one. Swords. Roland Morzek and I at the grand opening in Eagan, Minnesota of Ausfolk Viking Martial Arts, because Arthur von Eschen was gracious enough to have me and Roland go up there, and William Sharp from Hurstwick. We tested this mail armor here with swords, Viking Age swords that were good historical replicas, and we were unable to pierce it. We had proper gambeson behind it, and we had it over clay, not ballistics gelatin. But I really don't think it would have made any difference. The swords just didn't have the ability with the flex that the sword has. Perhaps if you had a stiffer sword with a sharper point, it might be possible. No one's going to say it's totally impossible, but it's not real probable to pierce it. It's very, very difficult. That was on a solid backing. The other things that don't damage it, we did a video. I'll bring that up. where it was from Matt Pat, who, for Honor, the video game, basically tried to go along with their idea that Vikings had no armor and, you know, all this stuff that's stereotypical. It's not true, which they would have had mail armor, good chance, especially if they're professional warriors. Kanungar, you know, kings, they would have had something good. You need your professional warriors under them, the Huskarler types. But the whole problem is, he was saying arrows could easily go through it. We tested it with conventional arrows up to 70-pound bows, which a lot of Yumi aren't much more powerful than that, and we were not able to penetrate it. So,
We are working on getting a higher poundage bow to test against long bows and stuff like that from
Oh, yes, we
Europe
are.
and England as well.
right, so that gives you an idea what won't damage it. Lightweight throwing projectiles, like I tried a very light peel, and with properly made mail over padding and ballistics gelatin, the pelum was actually stopped by the mail. I mean, you would think that, you know, possibly that is an armor-piercing thing that would go through. It didn't go through, but I think it also had to do with how lightweight the pelum was. And that was over a soldered style. So it wasn't quite riveted, so.
And of course some of the axes and stuff like that had trouble going through it due to the fact that the broader heads had a harder time going through it.
Right. Pay attention to what you're doing.
Generally, of course, your bludgeoning weapons will not cause damage to it. That's just because the fact that it's not made for that, it's made for breaking what's underneath it.
Correct.
It'll still do damage to the person though.
Correct.
That's what your gambesons were normally for.
As for the being soldered shut, that's possible in some of the Middle Eastern countries is what I heard. I haven't got a strong amount of evidence on that, but I'll have to look into that. But supposedly they actually did that quite often. They actually use that type of technique
But a lot less
for lighter weight
Europe.
nails and stuff. But I honestly think the biggest bang to the stuff, the thing that would damage the worst, were spears. Thrown spears and spears used properly.
Yeah, of course, a 130-pound wool bow with a decent weight there, am I?
Very true, very true.
Haven't tried that yet.
No, we will try something similar to that soon, is the whole idea. It's our whole goal anyway to eventually do that.
Yes, but you've also got to work on your arm strength for the 130-pound wool bow.
Well, very true.
That's going to be a bitch to pull.
And as you can see, we got our rings in here, and you can see the new rivets stand out a little bit more than the way it was riveted before, because these are round rivets, so they have a bit of a head to them. These rings are round, which is hard to see with it being so closely woven together. But you can see those rivets sticking up. Look around, you can see them. And these are flat rings, and these are round rings with a flat spot for the rivet. But all in all, this is just as strong as it was, and is this period. We use darkened rings. These are darkened like you get out of a forge, technically, so they don't rust as easily. Plus, mail gives a lot, rubs against itself, so it polishes itself. But is it period to have round rings mixed in with a full solid set like this? Yes, it's possible to have solid rings mixed in where they normally wasn't for the full shirt, or have solid riveted and then have a bunch of riveted sets together where it was repaired, because mail gets damaged. In one of our videos, we test the mail shirt, as you see here. Like Roland Varzek and I use spears, and we use the overarm throwing slide. I did one where I threw it, one where I used the motion of throwing and still caused extreme damage to the shirt and poked a hole through it. But those would have possibly killed the warrior under them. They went through deep enough to do so, the spear thrust. But I used an axe, what I nicknamed the Torslav or Torslav axe, that's from a good viewer of ours, who sent it to us to be tested. And it's a historically accurate axe based on the one from the Novgorod bog in Russia, probably from the Varangian era. On that axe, it's got a really narrow head, much like a Francesca. And some people believe Francesca were used to pierce armor, but it's much narrower than that. And we did quite a bit of damage to this mail, but although I kept hitting the same area and knocking rings out of it, which is going to be one of my harder repairs, we're not going to make you set through that here, it still wouldn't have probably injured the guy from the actual edge. The thing that would have injured the opponent, it would have made it through the gambeson or the padding underneath it, would have been the impacts. The impacts could have broken ribs, damaged internal organs, stuff like that, because it hit with an extreme
Made
amount of
something
force.
explode.
Right, it could have caused an organ to explode or some kind of damage like that, that kind of injury. But he wasn't going, it wasn't cut by the actual edge, even though it's razor sharp of the axe. And the axe had a good steel edge inserted into an iron body by Adrian Watson from No BS Blacksmithing on YouTube. You can check his videos out. He has a lot of videos. We've done some stuff with him before showing how to make a Viking fire steel. Matter of fact, I have a fire steel from him he sent me that we're actually going to test out, see how you can make fire with it. But this here, like I said, I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me repair this, but that's what caused the most damage, was hitting it with that axe head at an angle slightly. Not straight in, because the straight in blows kind of crimp some of the rings and stuff, but they, as you see, they bent them. They didn't actually cut through. It was the tip shots with the edge of the axe coming in at an angle, which would even less likely go through the opponent, are the ones that actually cut rings out. You may see you're just cutting rings out. There's some impact going through it. As for the spear, that was the only thing I think that we damaged this with. Roland Varzeka and I in Eagan, Minnesota. And also Viking martial arts. That's the only thing that we actually did enough damage to this nail that we could have killed the warrior or injured the warrior, depending on the thrust that was done on it.
And your sword throw.
On the sword throw, yes, the sword throw, I honestly believe, even on this shirt here, even though it was done on this Aventail, would have pierced the this mount shirt. But that's because of the extreme amount of force and the weight of the sword. The weight of the sword is much heavier. It's much like a heavy pilum, because you've got 3 to 4 pounds being thrown through the air at a very high rate of speed. And in that case, the give is not so much a factor as the velocity, and it's able to cut the rings as it goes through with that amount of speed and force and penetrate afterwards. That's the only thing it does lose after the initial impact and cutting rings and so on. It does lose some of its momentum, even though that would transfer through. But I think we did good. We've got this repaired here. I'm going to continue working on all this stuff, and I'll show you an update later of repairing all this nail and having it done. I think I covered everything that damaged the nail. We did, right? The spear, the axe.
I think so. I've lost count. There's
Yeah.
too many armours that we've tested over time.
Yeah, Wolfwolf Rolfinson is the one who sent us the original axe. That's an artifact. I will be sending that back to him. We tested it on that oil ballistics gel head. It's just that it wasn't safe to test on armors what we had in our Watson. It was the replica of it. So you can check that out
That
as well.
and we were scared people would try maim us if we did.
Oh yeah, those people would be very upset if you took a
Upset.
steel piece and actually tested it on steel. That would be going too far. What I did barely damage the patina, if anything.
They got upset about that one.
The coating on the outside, yeah. But anyway, I think we've got our video finally finished. I've showed how I'm putting the rings in. I'm doing it this way. Basically, I'm cheapskate. I didn't want to spend that kind of money on a special tool. I might eventually get one or make one. But this works fine for me. I've got the rivets in.
And if
They're
you make one,
holding
you gotta
well.
make sure it's not one of my repair tools.
Yeah, very steadfast. I hope you all enjoy our video. Be looking forward to what we have coming out. And speaking of Medieval Shop sending us this, thanks again, Your All Tim. Sorry, thanks for being patient on the box that you sent us. Right after the Hurricane Harvey, we had a box sent to us of swords. I've gotten through some of them, but we haven't done them all. So be looking forward to a sword out very soon. I'll
And
be
maybe
testing
that
one of the
lock
ones
with
out
a
of the box.
locksmith's opinion.
Huh?
Maybe that lock with a locksmith's opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a lock. We got a lock too. Yeah.
That thing weighs a ton.
Oh yeah, the very nice lock you sent from us. I want to do exact time period on the lock and give you some information on locks during the Viking Age and up and even earlier.
I'm not
So-
allowed to lock you in a chest, am I?
And as always, I guess this is pretty much the conclusion of our video. And as always, farewell. I'm Scott.
Tamata.
Special thanks to Chris Barker for making our shredding, rocking outro, our Conan's theme song. And would also like to give a very special thanks to Brad Lynn. You can go by and check his artwork out at Facebook if you want to see his fantasy and historical artwork. It's legendary and it's awesome, so be sure and go by there and check that out. And matter of fact, if you want to procure his artwork, and he does all our logos, intros, and outros for the channel, even the Thrand Conan image you see at the end, you can go ahead and get that on a t-shirt, the Experimental Archaeology shirt, and other viewer-made logos and items at Viral Styles.